Okay guys, welcome to chapter 13. We're going to be starting to look at ecology. As you go through this brief video here, you're going to want to fill in all of the notes as far as you can with those. And also make sure that you're answering those questions contained within the notes. Now some of those questions might not appear written in front of you right on the screen, but nonetheless they're questions that I will be talking about and you should be able to answer. So with that in mind, we are looking at chapter 13 and ecology. We're going to start off by looking at what ecology is. Well, ecology is the study of interactions among living things, between living things, and between living things and their environment. In other words, we're going to be studying things. What are some things ecologists might study? Well, some things that they might study would be, how do sharks interact with other sharks? Or how do spiders interact with other spiders? Or how do lions interact with cheetahs? Or how do rabbits interact with rats? Now, some of those things you might be wondering, why would I say like rabbits and rats? Well, rabbits are actually rodents, and so are rats. So people who have rabbits, especially rabbit cages that are unkept, they have a high attraction for rats. So if you happen to have a rabbit, make sure that you keep the cage or the wherever you keep it, make sure you keep that clean, because that can attract rats. I mentioned spiders. What are some interactions between spiders? Well, we found out by studying the interactions between spiders that after mating, the female spider will actually eat and kill the male spider. That's kind of a weird interaction, but it's something that we found out by studying those interactions. Other things that we might study in ecology would include how living things interact with their non-living environment. For example, another thing that ecologists might study would be, how do deer interact with rocks? Or how do deer interact with water? Or how do deer interact with, I don't know, maybe wind? Wind is something that's not living, but it is definitely part of the environment. So how would deer interact with rocks or boulders? Well, depends. Let's suppose that a deer lives in a very rocky environment where there's big boulders, maybe not so much like a mountain, but big boulders. How could a deer use those? Well, one way is, if you know how agile deer are, they can cut and turn, which is great because they can get away from predators. Well, if a deer can navigate through tight rocks, big boulders, easily, it has a better chance of getting away from some predators that might be stalking it. How might deer interact with water? Well, one way is obviously drinking, but is that it? Well, maybe they use it for bathing too, so that's a different interaction. How could deer interact with wind? Well, have you ever watched Bambi? And have you ever seen the deer just kind of put their heads up in the air? Well, the air carries sound waves that allow deer to hear things that might startle them. Wind also carries scents, which allows deer to pick up smells from rather far away. These are all things that hunters are very, very aware of. They understand, and if you're a hunter, you know what I'm talking about. You really want to mask your own human scent when you're hunting deer. Otherwise, that deer can pick you up a mile away and you have no shot at shooting it. Similarly with the noise, if you're making a lot of noise stepping on twigs and sticks, those sound waves carry through the air and they get to the deer. So wind and air are non-living around the deer, and the deer do use it to their advantage. So these are just some of the interactions between living things in their living and non-living environment. Moving on, we're going to be looking at the different levels of organization, and these are vocabulary words that you definitely want to familiarize yourself with. In fact, it might not be a bad idea to pause the video right at about this point so you can copy these definitions down into your notes. Hopefully by this point you have those filled in. We have organisms, which are individual living things, populations, which are groups of organisms of the same species living in the same area. We have communities, which is a group of species living together in one area, so you might have multiple species in the same habitat. An ecosystem is an extension of community. It includes all of the things that we have in the community level, but now it includes the non-living things as well. And by the way, living things are biotic, and non-living things like water and rocks are abiotic. And the top level that we're going to be looking at is the biome level, which is characterized as a major regional or global community of organisms. Wow, what the heck does all that mean? In a nutshell, it means this. Where on a planet can you go and find similar life and similar non-living things like climate that we find here? Well, the name of the biome that we live in is the desert. So essentially, where else on our planet can you go and it's going to be the desert? Well, maybe parts of Africa. You also have other parts of Asia that are deserts. You also have part of California, which is a different type of desert than we have here. And are all of those desert biomes going to be exactly the same? Certainly not, but they're going to have striking similarities. The same type of plants will live there, the same type of animals will live in those environments, and it's going to be relatively dry with varying degrees of heat. That's all characteristics of desert. The next slide here, we're going to look at a picture that puts all of these together. And this will be a great picture that you can come back to and visit when you're going through the 13.1 assignment. I actually mentioned in the directions, read those directions, by the way, guys. I won't be there to help you. Read those directions. This will help you maybe get an idea of what to include in some of those columns. So it shows us the levels of organization, organisms, like these alligators, populations of those alligators. Now we're looking at several of those alligators together. And then the community, we start to look at the different species all living in the same area. So we'll be talking about the alligators, but also these birds here, these herons. We see a couple of those. We see a fish right here. That's part of the habitat as well. We see a turtle here. All of those different species, the alligator, the heron, the fish, this turtle, those are all different species living in the same area. That's characteristic of a community. Extending this out to an ecosystem now we're talking about all of these animals we just described, but we're also taking in the non-living parts of the world as well. So we have these alligators, these herons, these fish, these turtles, these grasses, which I should have mentioned. Those are alive. Those are a species. That's part of the community as well. And so are these trees. Now that I think about it, I overlook this stuff. But in the ecosystem level, we include all that and the following non-living characteristics as well. The water, that's not alive. This cloud cover that we see, that's not alive. It's part of the atmosphere. So we live in an overcasty area, at least parts of the year. Whatever the temperature happens to be. I don't know what the temperature in this picture would be. You can maybe make a guess as what the temperature would be. But temperature is not alive, but it's part of this. So temperature is part of the ecosystem. The amount of rainfall that we get here. Rain is not alive, but it's part of the ecosystem. It's there. Similarly with wind, I'm not sure how much wind is here, but wind would be considered part of the ecosystem. These are all a few examples of non-living things that are part of the ecosystem. If there's any rocks or on this beach, rocks would be part of the ecosystem as well. So would this soil, this sand that's on this beach. That's non-living. That's part of the ecosystem as well. And the top level, which we can't see, is the biome. The biome is including all of this, but more specifically, the biome is saying, okay, we see this here. Where else can we go on our planet and find the same type of living and non-living things together? All right, so that's what we're talking about with this. This concludes the lecture portion of Chapter 13.1. There is an assignment that goes through this and reviews this information with you. You're going to be putting together a scenario very similar to what you see right on the screen right now, but you're doing it for your own personal ecosystem. So you're going to be starting with you yourself. So if this were me, I put Mr. Millmine in that column. Population, I put my family, so my wife and kids would be listed in the population along with myself. The community, I'd be listing my family members' names along with all the animals that happen to live in my neighborhood. And then the ecosystem would be all of the animals in my neighborhood as well as all of the non-living things. So think about some of those non-living things I list in the ecosystem. That's what I'm looking for from you in that particular assignment. And when you get done with that columns and the charts, do not overlook the questions on the back side. You'll need to do a little bit of reading on pages 398, 399, and 400 to answer a few questions about methods of ecology that scientists use to collect information. And those would be observations, experimentations, and modeling. So don't overlook those questions as well. All right, we'll see you when you get to the 13.2 video.